Hi everyone. Long story short, I remade my Why Resident Evil 6 Doesn't Suck video to make it more accessible. And when I say more accessible, I mean coherent and shorter. Let me say that there will be no spoilers in this video, and please don't spoil anything in the comments. Again, like the other video, I have so much more to tell about this subject, but I gotta shorten it. So, let's start. Angry Joe says the reason why Resident Evil 6 is on his list is because it made a radical genre change, going away from its original survival horror roots to more action-oriented gameplay, which is true. However, that does not justify it being put on the worst games list. Angry Joe even says this, and yet he continues to bash the game. First of all, he mentions Operation Raccoon City. This is invalid and ignorant. Operation Raccoon City has nothing to do with Resident Evil 6. It was made by a different company, but published by Capcom. This is like saying EA made the character Garrus Vakarian from Mass Effect 3. BioWare made that character. Yes, it was bad for Capcom to whore out Resident Evil, but this has nothing to do with the development of Resident Evil 6. Angry Joe made it very evident that he did not play the game and just played the demo, which is a non-finished version of the game. Let's just think about this for a second. Someone is condemning a game which they did not fully play to be bad. This is completely asinine. The footage he showed was of demo gameplay, and there were 2 different demos for this game. Any non-demo footage he showed during his little review thing showed other players' gameplay footage. You could tell this by the references he put in. So at least he cites his sources. He states him and his buddy were laughing at how terrible this game was, even though he never played all of it. Just a beta demo. And as for the bugs in the demo itself, my buddy and I, who between us, we played at least 6 times through the main story, did not notice any bugs at all. Angry Joe says less story and more action about this game. I think the words he meant to say was less horror and more action, which is true. But less story? First of all, he can't say a damn thing because he never finished the game. Secondly, in this game, we get 4 different types of story modes. Without spoiling anything, the story modes consist of Leon and Helena, which focuses mainly on the old school Raccoon City's destroyed Resident Evil feeling. However, it does dip into the high octane action. Majority of the time, you'll be fighting actual zombies in this mode, and each of the zombies are varied. The second campaign consists of Chris and Piers. This gameplay focuses on more modern third-person shooter aspects. You'll be fighting rebels who are using BOWs, which means, quote-unquote, zombies with guns. Now, the third campaign consists of Jake and Sherry. In this mode, you will be fighting the same enemies that Chris Redfield does. However, these 2 characters focus more on CQC battling, though you can still engage via firearms like the last 2. However, the majority of the time with these 2 characters, they'll be getting chased by something or someone, which leads to a new version of horror. Now, the 4th, previously had to be unlocked mode, focuses on Ada Wong and her partner, Agent Bob. This storyline ties up all the plot holes the other 3 storylines dig up. Originally, you had to play this mode single player, but Capcom decided, well, since the other 3 modes were co-op, we might as well make this one too. Co-op, sorry. So they added Ada's co-op partner, Agent Bob. Now, that's what me and my buddy call him. He's more like Hunk. He is literally taped on. He has no voice acting lines whatsoever. He's just there, and was merely added so a friend can play Ada's storyline with you. He does have a unique set of melee abilities, though. Just like the rest of the class, he gets his own weapons and such. With all 4 different storylines, which do intertwine together, you basically get 4 different perspectives on one overall arching storyline. Not only does Resident Evil 6 bring back Leon Kennedy, who's an old character from the Resident Evil series, but they also bring back another old character from the Resident Evil series, Chris Redfield. So, Resident Evil 6 brings old characters, they add new, interesting characters, and even some old new characters into the fray. I know, it sounds strange, but you're just gonna have to play it and find out. Throughout the game, I felt nostalgic at many, many points. However, one of the most intense nostalgic attacks I had was during Chris's campaign. You face a familiar enemy that you faced back in Resident Evil 1, and no, it's not Johnny Bravo. More on the intertwining aspect of the game. During the main game, you can run into two other co-op characters. So say if you're playing Leon and Helena, you can run into Jake and Sherry. The game then tries to find two real-life players on the same part of that game that you are in, which turns into a 4-player game. This happens several times throughout the game, which is very innovative. Not only do you have to cooperate with each other, you can unlock hidden treasures with them, which requires 4 people. But also, near the end of one of the campaigns, you have to fight against them. It's not what you think, but just play the game. You'll like it. Story-wise, Capcom pushed the emotional bounds with all the characters in this game, especially Chris Redfield. This was a huge surprise. Chris is pushed to his limits, and Capcom writers were excellent in showing that Chris is a human being. All the characters show believability and allow me to become immersed in the game, mainly because of the superb voice acting from the voice acting crew. Angry Joe says that the game, which he did not play, is all about action. Honestly, action is a pretty big component here in this game, but just because a game has a lot of action does not mean it is brainless. The game in itself is complex and uses high-octane action and slower-paced puzzle and even some exploration and stealth elements to keep you hooked, which shows that this is a masterfully written game, both story and technical-wise. Just by playing through the game, again, something Angry Joe did not do, you can see all the hard work and effort Capcom poured into this game. It was their largest project ever. Angry Joe says that the game, which he didn't play, has bad level design. This isn't true at all. He says that the action, in a mocking sort of way, is pulse-pounding Michael Bay action, and in the same breath says that the set pieces and level designs are dull and boring. This is kind of a contradiction, because in order to pull off Michael Bay action, you need great set pieces, which this game has. So Angry Joe basically contradicts himself about a game he never played. All joking aside, focusing on the actual level design itself, we are treated to many various changing level designs from each campaign. For example, we are treated to a university, then a ruined city, then a church, then a secret underground laboratory, then catacombs, then a drowned facility, and finally to another ruined, more populated city. Did I mention that all these sets were only in one campaign out of the 4? Each campaign, some of them do share certain set pieces, but majority of the time, they're going to be unique set pieces. And all these set pieces scream Resident Evil. Angry Joe, for some reason, thinks he can speak for everyone and states that the reason why he plays Resident Evil, which he never played this game, is the same for why everyone plays Resident Evil. The world doesn't revolve around you, Angry Joe, but the point he was making was, we want the horror atmosphere, which is good, but in some cases, it isn't true. Personally, I play for the characters and the deep, immersive story. I care about the characters. I care about the story. The big bonus was the extremely fun gameplay and the fantastic, innovative control scheme, which he wouldn't know because he never played the damn game. Now, before you jump down my throat, I will explain why the controls are so good at the end of this video. I just need the time to do it. Angry Joe pokes fun at some of the Resident Evil 6 boss fights. He basically states that they are ridiculous. And honestly, in some cases, they kind of are. When I saw one of the boss fights, the one Angry Joe was making fun of in his video, I did say, holy shit, are you kidding me? Where am I? But without giving too much away, it shouldn't be surprising. I mean, it should be both surprising and not surprising. Let's take a look at the pattern of boss fights in the Resident Evil series as a whole. Resident Evil 3 had a giant zombie with a rocket launcher, Nemesis. Resident Evil 4 had a giant, the El Gianto, whatever. It also had a big Leviathan fish boss. It had a person who looked like Napoleon turning into a giant thing. And finally, it had a giant spider priest boss person. Big bosses, ridiculous bosses shouldn't be new in the Resident Evil series, is basically what I'm trying to say. Capcom constantly wants to push the envelope on what is new. And I can almost guarantee you never faced this type of enemy before in any other game. I can guarantee you never did. The one thing I don't understand is why some people dislike this game, but they're 100% okay green flag status with Resident Evil 4. which is basically the same pacing for each game, Resident Evil 6 and Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 broke the old school Resident Evil style and focused on action. Arguably, it is the best game ever made. So, Capcom trying to please their fans focus on action in Resident Evil 5. The fans wanted more horror and puzzles. So in Resident Evil 6, they added 4 separate modes with all of them having that nostalgic feeling of old school Resident Evil on certain parts, especially Leon and Ada's storylines. And yet, everyone bitches again? Isn't it our fault for liking Resident Evil 4? That's basically saying, yes, Capcom, action. We like action. So Capcom just wanted to please us. But you know what? This day and age, I guess companies trying to please their fans is bad. I mean, who doesn't like being anally raped by EA, right? In conclusion, adding this game to your worst of list might discourage some people from buying such a fantastic game. And at the end of the day, that's what this video is all about. The taking away point for this video is review this as a game, nothing else. Okay, so let's see. Good story, coherent story, not a crappy ending. Check. Interesting characters? Check. Fun gameplay? Check. Good set designs? Check. Varied enemies? Check. So, it doesn't end up being that bad, huh? And even as a Resident Evil game, this game is still fantastic. The story makes up for any flaws this game has, which are few and far in between. If any flaws. Resident Evil 4 broke the original Resident Evil gameplay, and everyone loved it. And this is just an evolution of that. Mr. Angry Joe, you are a fantastic reviewer. I like you. I really do. This is probably why it hurts so much when you put this on your worst games list. You stated a long time ago that despite Mass Effect 3 having a bad ending, and it did, it is still a good game. A good game. So despite your disappointment, you should still see it as a game. Resident Evil 6, I mean. And honestly, you never played the damn game. If you did, let me know. But I doubt you did. I'm 99% sure you didn't play it. So you shouldn't be talking about a game that you never played. You bashed a game without giving any real evidence. Just a lot of sensationalism. That's just stupid, and you are not a stupid person. Still like you, maybe. Okay, this is the end of the video. Now in this link that's up on your screen right now, I'll explain why the controls are fantastic. I'll show you direct evidence, unlike some people, on why the controls are great. Click it!